will be on the testimonial evidence. So I have uh, trimmed down the topics that are the salient features of testimonial evidence. So class, if you could still remember our previous discussion, so there are at least three important aspects of evidence. That is the uh, object. We have this object evidence, then we have this documentary evidence, and this one, the testimonial evidence. So what are these testimonial evidence class? So testimonial evidence class, it has been defined as a type of evidence that comes from a person's testimony or statement. So as provided for, it has been defined by Black Laws Dictionary to be a an oral evidence elicited from the mouth of a witness as distinguished from real and documentary evidence. So of course, class, when we say of this uh, documentary testimonial evidence, so we will be discussing its very nature. Of course, class, as it has been provided by the Book of Piano, it says that it is something called viva voce. Viva voce, class, is one way of having an election, which means that who are all in favor of a person, please say aye. Who are in favor of this person, who are not in favor of this person, say nay. So viva voce or raising of hands like that, showing the intention of eliciting from the mouth of the person a statement or a testimony. Okay. So viva voce literally means living voice or by word of mouth. In this kind of evidence, a human being is called to the stand, is asked questions. Stands mean class, you are put into trial and you are put into a witness stand. So you are asked questions, then you have to answer. Of course, you have to answer class when you are asked questions because in our laws, silence does not means always no. So you have to express your intention or your testimony. Okay. So the person who gives the testimony is called the witness. Okay. So so uh, of course, class, not all persons are qualified to be a witness. So there must be a qualification of witness which is provided for under Section 21, Rule 130 of the Revised Code, Rules of Court. So what is this class? So if you are uh, research of your searching or have uh, in your gadget or book these uh, rules of court under rule 1 under one rule 21 of the rules of court, rule 130 class, it says that except as provided for in the next succeeding section, all persons who can perceive and perceiving can make known their perception to others may be a witness. religious or political belief, interest in the outcome of the case, or conviction of a crime, unless otherwise provided for by law, shall not ground for disqualification. So the above provision class supplies the basic qualification of the witness. First, he can perceive. Then, he can make known his perception to others, and uh, he may be considered now as a witness. So there are at least two qualifications. So if you could recall that the competent evidence means evidence that is not excluded by law or rules. So it is therefore means the eligibility of an evidence to be admitted to court. So when applied to a witness, competence means that the witness is qualified to stand and testify. It means that he is fit or eligible to testify for a particular matter in a judicial proceeding. Okay? So if a witness cannot perceive, or even if he can perceive but he cannot remember what he has perceived, he is incompetent to testify. If he has no personal knowledge of an event, the truth of which he wants to prove, he is also incompetent to testify. Competence of a witness therefore refers to his personal qualification to testify. Competence also includes the absence of any factor that would disqualify him from being a witness. Experience and plain observation will tell us that the presentation and introduction of every kind of evidence, whether it be object, documentary, need the intervention of the witnesses. Okay? So the admission of any evidence requires its identification by a witness. It is a legal truth that identification precedes authentication. Okay? Without a witness, no evidence can ever be authenticated. So even the so-called self-authenticating documents need a witness to identify the documents. So the reason is simple. Being inanimate, a document or an object cannot speak for itself. So class, it means that even if it is even if you have this best evidence rule or the document itself on the object evidence, as long as you have not duly authenticated it through a competent witness. Say, for example, you want to, there is a CCTV and it is being offered as evidence to prove that the said person is not present when the crime was committed. But there is no authentication as to whether or not the said CCTV has not been edited or has been recorded in the past. So each due authentication may be denied by the court class because there is no person who could attest that it is in fact duly authenticated. So you should present a witness, say for example, the CCTV controller or the one who has knowledge or specialty regarding that subject matter. Okay. Then the presumption in favor of competence of a witness, of course, class, as provided for under Jones on evidence, it says that those who sit there in the witness stand, question and ask, are presumed to have been a competent witness. Okay? Unless otherwise, the offer of this testimony has been objected thereto for being incompetent, immaterial. Okay? So That is why there is a very important aspect, a topic with respect to evidence, this formal offer of evidence. Okay? So, testimony confined to personal knowledge. Of course, class, if you will be taken into if you will be taken to a witness stand, you have to take your oath and affirmation. How do you do that? It is the say for example, if you are in court, the clerk of court will swear you or take an affirmation that you will say the truth, nothing but the truth, to help me God. Okay, unless you have subscribed, you have taken your oath, you cannot testify if you have not taken your oath. Okay, so ability. We'll go first to the ability before going to the personal knowledge. We'll go first to the, what do we mean by ability to perceive? So there is an example. Section 22 of Rule 130 explicitly requires that a witness testifying only to those facts which he or she knows of his or her personal knowledge, which those which are derived from his or her own perception. So what do we mean by this perception? Sir, what do you mean by this perception? So in order for you to understand this perception class, a uh, hyperbole could be given to you so that you can understand pretty well what is this perception means about. So thus, it would be absorbed class to ask a blind man what he saw, okay? Or a deaf person what he heard. So meaning, in correlation with section 22 class, confined to your personal knowledge, which you perceive. Say, for example, if you have seen the person, uh, you have seen a person bump another to an accident, and you are there. So you have to make known of your perception. I during the time, Your Honor, I saw A riding a motorcycle bump B because he failed to apply the brake. So that is conveying or perceiving your perception to another person. Okay? So when the witness takes an oath or affirmation to tell the truth, he cannot live up to that oath or affirmation without his ability to show that his testimony is based on his personal knowledge. Without his personal knowledge, the witness lacks the competence to testify. Okay? Then ability to make known the perception to another, of course, you should say that during that scenario, that the example that I have given, you have to remember that during that it was during the vacation time when I was at our house, probably 8 o'clock in the morning, while I was standing at our porch, which is near the or in fronting the road. I happened to watch the incident when A bomb riding his motorcycle B in front of our house. So that is ability to make known of your perception to another. Okay? So uh, this testimony confined to your personal knowledge class, as explicitly written under the rules. I will repeat that a witness testify only to the facts which he or she knows or his or her personal knowledge derived from his kuan, derived from his senses or what he had witnessed. So you might ask class, sir, how about those person uh, who would tell a lie, sir? In that case, so that is up to the judge to determine whether his testimony is truth is has a semblance of truth or not. So as the law, the obligation of the counsel or the lawyer is to uh, present facts and present witness to support their allegations or facts. And it is also the right of the other counsel uh, to present facts in support or present defense in support of his client's claim. So it is up to the judge to determine whether such statement is in consonance with the crime charge or it is very different from uh, the other charge. Okay. Then we will go to competence and credibility claims. Okay. So so if you will say, sir, we'll repeat again, sir. How do we determine if the person is lying or not? So uh, we can answer it by these two principles, class: the competence and credibility. So competence is a matter of law, or in this jurisdiction, also a matter of rule. Okay. Credibility of a witness has nothing to do with the law of or the rules. Okay. Remember that, class. It refers to the weight and truthworthiness or reliability of the testimony. Okay. In deciding the competence of a witness, the court will not inquire into the truthfulness of a witness. Okay. In the case of U.S. versus Cook, it says accordingly a free witness, reciting, reciting witness, or one has given contradicting testimony is still a competent witness, although he may be competent as a witness, his testimony may not be given much weight by the court or no weight at all if the court deems him not trustworthy or of belief. The competence of the witness must hence be sharply distinguished from his credibility. Okay? Competence of a witness has represent to the a reference to the basic qualification of witness as his capacity to perceive and communicate his perception to others. It also includes the absence of any of the disqualifications imposed upon a witness. So it's provided under sections 22, 24 under the rules 130 of the rules of court. So credibility of a witness refers to the believability of a witness and has nothing to do with the law or the rules. It refers to the weight and truthfulness of or reliability of the testimony. So in deciding the competence of the witness, the court will not inquire into the truthfulness of a witness. As earlier mentioned, a witness who has given contradicting testimony is still competent witness. Okay, bias is not even a basis for declaring a witness incompetent to testify. Okay. So there are factors, class, that do not affect the competence of the witness. If you could still remember under section 1, under section 21 of Rule 130, paragraph 2, it says that the following factors do not, as a general rule, constitute a disqualification of the witness. His religious belief, his political belief, interest in the outcome of the case or conviction of a crime, unless otherwise provided by law. So, example of this is that those who have been convicted of falsification of documents, perjury, or false testimony are disqualified from being witness to a will. That is provided for under Article 821 of the Civil Code. Okay. And also, there is also this, as provided for under the case of Northwest Airlines versus Chong, says that the relationship of a witness with a party does not ipso facto render him a biased witness in criminal cases where the quantum of evidence is proof beyond reasonable doubt. There is no reason why the same principle should not apply to civil case where the quantum of evidence is only preponderance of evidence. Okay. Okay. Then child witness. So I have experienced this in one of my cases, class, this child witness. So who are child witness? So under section 4A rule on examination of child witness, administrative matter 004-07 Supreme Court, it says that a child witness is any person who at the time of giving testimony is below 18 years old, below the age of 18 years old. May a person over 18 years old be considered as a child? In child abuse cases, a child includes 1 over 18. The answer, yes. A child includes 1 over 18 but is found by the court as unable to fully take care of himself or protect himself from abuse, negligence, cruelty, exploitation, or discrimination because of a physical or mental disability or condition. So, say for example, imbecile. So even at the age of 25 or 30, he is still considered, his testimony is that of a child of the age of 5 years old or 6 years old or 7 years old. So under the rules, he or she may be considered as a witness, as a child witness. Okay, then the child witness is presumed competent to testify. Of course, class, general rule is that every child is presumed qualified to be a witness. So this presumption is provided for under Section 6 rule on examination of a child witness. They are presumed to be competent. Okay? So, in fact, jurisprudence has consistently given full weight and credence to a child's testimony. Youth and immaturity are badge of truth and sincerity as provided for under People versus in Trampas. Okay? So, when the court finds that substantial doubt exists regarding the ability of the child to perceive, remember, communicate, distinguish truth from falsehood or appreciation, the duty to tell the truth in court, the court shall conduct a competent examination of the child. The court may also prove motu proprio or a motion of a party. Okay. So a party who seeks a competent examination must present proof of necessity of competency examination. Proof of such necessity must be grounded on a reason other than the age of the child, because such age in itself is not sufficient basis for competency examinations. The competency examination of a child witness is not open to public class. Only the following are allowed to attend the examination. So when say for example the case is rape class, and in a rape case the child the minor child are the witness. So those persons lang, a judge and unnecessary court personnel are there. Just what happened to my case class, only a selected few are there. Then the counsel for the parties, then the guardian ad litem, mother or parents, the one or more support persons for child, and the defendant, unless the court determines that competence can be fully evaluated in his absence. So class, if it is if the child will testify, it is not although the court is a trial can be held in open court as a rule, this is an exemption. So only a selected few can be present there. So we'll go now to disqualification of witness. Of course, class, since there is this rule on qualification of witness, there is this so-called disqualification of witness, and it is provided for under section 23 of the rules of court. Okay, so prior to the amendments, the rule on evidence. So Rule 130 of the Rules of Courts expressly provided for the disqualification of a witness on account of mental capacity or immaturity. However, this was deleted, considering that by such incapacity, a witness may also be disqualified under Section 21 of Rule 130 because he or she would be incapable of intelligently making known his or her perception to others. Of course, if the mental incapacity is not such that would render one incapable of intelligently making known one's perception to others, then such person would still be qualified to be a witness. So that's as provided for under Section 21 of the Rules class. So there are provisions in Article 130 which provides for a disqualification of a witness. One of those is marital disqualification rule. So later on, we'll determine the distinction between marital disqualification by marriage and disqualification by marital disqualification versus marital privilege communication. Okay. So here, class, under Section 23, Rule 130 of the Rules of Court, it says that during their marriage, class, remember this, neither the husband or the wife cannot testify against the one without the consent of the affected person or the affected spouse. First, class, consent is very essential. So if you are married with each other, anything uh, any criminal acts or any crime that may or may have been committed cannot be used or cannot be what you call this one class uh, cannot be utilized by the other person except without the consent of the latter. Okay? But there is an exception to this. Except in a civil case by one against the other, or in a criminal case for crime committed by one against the other or the latter's direct descendants or ascendant. So while as a rule class that while as a rule during the celebration of your marriage is subsisting, any part or any spouse cannot without the consent of the other utilize his testimony as a witness to the other, except one if in civil case the the one is party to another. What is this? Say for example in civil case, annulment. So in annulment, the other person may may utilize his or her statement as against to the other. Okay? Then in criminal case also, say for example, if it is committed against the person of the other spouse, say for example, attempted parasite, okay? Frustrated parasite, infanticide, sa or the latter's direct descendant or ascendant. Okay? Physical abuse, BAUSI, violence against women and children. So the testimony of the other spouse without the consent of the other may be used, may be utilized. And also class, there is an exception in the case of Alvarez versus Ramirez. It says that testimony of estranged spouse, there is no longer any reason to apply the marital disqualification rule. So, it should be stressed that as shown by the records prior to the commission of the offense, the relationship between petitioner and his wife was already strained. In fact, they were separated de facto almost 6 months before the incident. Indeed, the evidence and the facts presented reveal that the preservation of the marriage between petitioner and Esperanza is no longer an interest of the state, which aims to protect. So if there is already an annulment which has already been granted, or they have been separated in fact, okay, so the testimony of the estranged spouse may be used now as evidence to the other party. Okay? Provided that it has been made prior to the commission of the offense. Okay? Then another disqualification as provided for under the rules. So it is provided for under section 24 of rule 130 of the rules of court. It says that the following person cannot testify as to the matters learned in confidence in the following cases. Remember, class, that the other one is marital disqualification because of marriage. Here, class, is marital privilege communication. So there has been an information or a privileged information that was transferred to you because you are partners. Okay? you are the spouse. So you have entrusted so much for the other because in the eyes of the law, or in the eyes of the law and of God, you are considered as one person. Okay. So there is a, say for example, we'll make a scenario. Say for example that the your partner say, uh, we will sell illegal drugs. Say for example like that, we will sell illegal drugs. So it is a privileged communication because it was given during your marriage. So you cannot be a witness against your partner because of that scenario. But here we will discuss, or I will read what is this privileged communication as provided for under section 24 paragraph A. The husband or the wife during or after the marriage cannot be examined without the consent of the other as to any communication received in confidence by one from the other during the marriage, except in a civil case by one against the other, or in a criminal case for a crime committed by one against the other or the latter's descendant or ascendant. So, same na siya sa section 20, section 23. Okay? So the law ensures absolute freedom of communication between the spouse by making it privileged. Neither may be examined without the consent of the other as to any communication received in confidence by one from the other during the marriage. So since the application of the rule requires a confidential information received by one spouse from the other during the marriage, information acquired by a spouse before the marriage, even if received confidentially, will not fall under fall squarely within the provision of Section 24A of Rule 130. So remember this, Kasha? If it was received prior to the marriage, even if say for example you are still sweetheart, you are not still married, so it cannot be considered as privilege by reason of marital communication. Okay. So what is this? How do we distinguish between marital disqualification rule as provided for under Section 23 and Section 24? Okay. So Section 24A of Rule 130 speaks of confidential communication received by one spouse from the other during the marriage. Okay. The marital disqualification rule under Section 22 of Rule 130 does not refer to confidential communications between the spouse. Remember that, yes, Kasa? So here, Section 24 limited only to privileged communication received during the marriage. Well, with respect to marital disqualification, you are barred because you married that person. Okay? So it will not come into play when the fact pattern in a problem makes reference to confidential communication between husband and wife during the marriage. Section 24A, Rule 130 will instead apply. However, communications that are not intended to be confidential because they were uttered in the presence of a third person are not deemed confidential even when made during the marriage. But Section 23 could apply instead of Section 23. So the difference here, class, in our layman's term, kung example na ay nakadungog, galain, then siya, oy, kuan man eh, kaning, di ba nag-ingon to imong mister ngay ani? Parang, oh yes, oh yes, oh, nag-ingon siya. Maligya daw sa drugs, daghan nakadungog. So, privileged communication in that sense will not apply Section 24. But the one that would apply is Section 23 because it is not considered anymore as privilege because there is another person who was informed of the who knows or informed of the scenario. So when we say privilege, you are given that information because you are privileged enough to have learned it. So what will you do? Of course, you will say, objection, Your Honor, that testimony of the witness is disqualified because of privilege by reason of marital relationship or marriage. But if it is privilegedly communicated, then you will say that I invoke Section 24 of Paragraph 1, marital privilege communication. Hopefully you have a working knowledge regarding that matter, class. Now we'll go to the a disqualification by reason of privilege communication. B, attorney-client privilege. Of course, class, I myself cannot divulge what my clients have said. Okay? Because of the confidentiality in nature. So you will say, you will ask, I experienced also this class. I have signed a deed of sale containing deed of sale, and I was entrusted with a title of that case, a title of the land. So since I am the lawyer, I was given this SPA as this general power of attorney, or even if I am a lawyer, I am given this general power of attorney. That's different, class, ha? To administer and to transact for a specified prospective buyer of the said property. And I was entrusted with a kaning did title, original title of the case, of the land. Unknown to me, class, that the family of my client is against the sale, but they cannot do so since their father inherit the said property as paraphernalia property, meaning, class, they inherit it from his parent. So when we say inherit it to his parent, and it was not conjugal, class, and he is still alive, he has the absolute authority to sell said property to any person whom he decides. Okay. Now, since he got a kidney problem and he wanted to have a operation, so he decided to sell that property. Now, this property was sold to another person, and I have given the title, title. Unknown to me, he has also a different title, has many title, class, considering that he is he acquired during during the lifetime of his parents. Their parents are well off, so they have acquired several properties, and it passed down to him when his father died. So now, unfortunately, he died also. So upon his death, one of her descendant called me and threatened me that I should tell where did I put who's the person who kept the the titles. So I just invoke, I'm sorry, I cannot tell you because it is a attorney-client privilege. So I cannot give you uh, the name of the person, because but for me, class, I do not know where that title. I do not know where is the title, but I just invoke this attorney-client privilege. So what is this really client attorney privilege as provided for under Section 24 of the Rules of Court? It says here, class, under paragraph B, an attorney or a person reasonably believed by the client to be a licensed to engage in the practice of law cannot, without the consent of the client, be examined as to any communication made by the client or him or her or his or her advice given thereon in the course of or with a view to professional employment, nor can attorney secretaries, stenographer, so extend to secretary, stenographer, or clerk, or other person assisting the attorney to be examined without the consent of the client or his or her employment concerning any fact, the knowledge of which has been acquired in such capacity, except in the following cases: furtherance of a crime or fraud. If the services of or advice of the lawyer were sought to obtain to enable or aid anyone to commit or plan to commit what the client knew or reasonably should have known to be a crime or fraud. So that's exemption, class. Claimants through same deceased person as to a communication relevant to an issue between parties who claim to the same deceased person, a deceased client, regardless of whether the claims are by testate or intestate or by inter vivos transaction. So maybe, class, I can correlate, okay, because there is here an exception. Claimants to same disease client. So claimants. We will go on that, because that's a very interesting topic. So we'll dwell into this, the second exception. Third, breach of duty by lawyer or client as to a communication relevant to an issue, or breach of a duty by a lawyer to his client or by the client to his or her lawyer. So there is a breach of duty. Then document assisted by the lawyer as to a communication relevant to an issue concerning an unattested document to which the lawyer is an attesting witness. So katong ginotaryuhan, class, or nag-attest. Joint clients as to communication relevant to a matter of common interest between two or more clients if the communication made was by any of them to a lawyer retained or consulted in common when offered in an action between any of the clients unless they have expressly agreed otherwise. So we'll look for the explanation on these claimants exemption. Okay. So we have this quality class, the CIPRA, or Code of Professional Responsibility. Canon 21 states that a lawyer shall preserve the confidence and secrets of his client, even after the attorney-client relationship is terminated. Okay? The reason for the prohibition is found in the relation of attorney and client, which is one of trust and confidence of the highest degree. A lawyer becomes familiar with all the facts connected with his client's case. He learns from his clients the weak position of the action as well as the strong one. Such knowledge must be considered sacred and guarded with care. So that's pambato class. So if there is claimant, I can still invoke this CIPRA code. I will not trust the confidential secrets. Okay? Probably class case to case basis. And uh, if I will go there, so probably I might invoke it and I might research further these claimants. Okay? So for purposes of our discussion, so that you have a working knowledge on the issue. Then we have also this physician client privilege, of course. Same with the privilege as provided for under attorney-client. Okay, so it provides here a physician, psychotherapist, or a person reasonably believed by the patient to be authorized to practice medicine or psychotherapy cannot, in a civil case without the consent of the patient, be examined as to any confidential communication made for the purpose of diagnose or treatment of the patient's physical, mental, or emotional condition, including alcohol or drug addiction between the patient and his or her physical or psychotherapist. This privilege also applies to persons, including members of the patient's family, who have participated in the diagnosis or treatment of the patient under the direction of the physician or psychotherapist. What do you mean by psychotherapist? It means that a person licensed to practice medicine engage in the diagnosis or treatment of a mental or emotional condition, or a person licensed as a psychologist by the government while similarly engaged. Okay, so there are also related provisions in the article in the civil code class, which provides in article 2167 of the civil code, says that the rule does not require that a relationship between the physician and the patient be a result of a contractual relationship. It could be the result of a quasi-contractual relationship as when the patient is seriously ill and the physician treats him with even if he is not in a condition to give his consent, as in the situation described. So, of course, class, if you are in the emergency and you are dying or in the verge of dying, how could you give your consent? No, I don't want to be the doctor. Or you will say, you will say this privilege. Ako, Doc, ako ba ito naghilo atong iro sa amo ang silingan. That's a privilege communication. You can't say that. But then it will show that the owner of the dog is the doctor. So could you consider that as a physician patient relationship? Of course, class, if you will apply, because you have received it during your your medical practice, because in the aid of you help him during his you have this quasi contractual relationship already, since he is in the verge of emergency and you have attended the emergency as the professional doctor. Hope you have a working knowledge of that class. Then we have also this clergyman penitent privilege. So what do we mean by this? It is provided for under section 24 D, paragraph D. It says that a minister, priest, or a person reasonably believed to be so cannot, without the consent of the affected person, be examined as to any communication or confession made to or any advice given by him or her in his or her professional character in the course of discipline enjoined by the church to which the minister or priest belong. Class will not discuss that because it is sabotable. It is self-explanatory run. Okay. So we'll go to another no, we have last one. The privileged communication to a public officer. So a public officer cannot be examined during or after his or her tenure as to communication made to him or her in the official confidence when the court finds that the public interest would suffer the disclosure. So here, class, if you are familiar with if you are fan of hearing the news, you might hear these words, executive privilege. So presidential communication privilege. This means that it is the case of Senate versus Ermita, in relation which was used in El Monte versus Vasquez. It says that the doctrine of executive privilege, the court acknowledged that there are certain types of information which the government may withhold from the public, like military, diplomatic, and national security secrets, alluding to foreign jurisprudence. It was ruled that the president and those who assist him must be free to explore alternative in the process of shaping policies and making decisions, and to do so in a way many would be unwilling to accept private. Then the privilege has been described as a power of the government to withhold information from the public, the courts, and the Congress. So kung sa class, military, diplomatic, and other national security, they can invoke executive privilege. Cannot do so without the consent of the chief of or the president. However, the ability of the president to prevent military officer from testifying does not turn on executive privilege, but on the chief's executive power as commander-in-chief to control the action and speeches of the members of the armed forces. The president's prerogative as a chief in commander-in-chief are not hampered by the same limitation as in executive privilege. Gudani versus Singa. Okay. So while the Constitution provides that in Article 3 of Section 7 provides that the Constitution of the Philippines recognizes the right of the people to information on matters of public concern and guarantees access to official records, documents, and papers pertaining to official acts, transactions, or decisions, as well as government research data used as basis for public, subject to such limitation as may be provided by law. Okay, then how about privileged communication with respect to rule on electronic evidence? Okay. So under the privileged communication apply even to electronic evidence. So under Section 3, Rule 3 of the Rules of Evidence, electronic evidence, the confidential character of a privileged communication is not lost solely on the ground that it is in the form of electronic evidence. So how do you know that it is electronic evidence, class? These emails. Okay. Then we'll go over with, we'll go to another form of uh, testimonial privileges. So, two privileges are embodied in Section 25 of Rule 130. It says that parental privilege rule and filial privilege rule. What do you mean by this? So, under the parental privilege rule, a parent cannot be compelled to testify against his child or other direct descendants. Under the filial privilege rule, a child may not be compelled to testify against his parents or other direct ascendants. A person, however, may testify against his parents or children voluntarily, but if he refuses to do so, the rule protects him from any compulsion. Hindi mo mampugos. Okay? So, except when such testimony is indispensable in a crime against that person or by one parent against the other. So, then privilege relating to trade secrets. Section, no. So, this parental and filial privilege has also has correlation with Article 215 of the Family Code, which states that no descendant shall be compelled in a criminal case to testify against his parents, grandparents, except when such testimony is indispensable in a crime against the descendant or by one parent against the other. Okay. Then, privilege relating to trade secrets. Okay. If you are a worker of Jollibee, can you tell to McDonald's the recipe of Jollibee? Of course, class, no. Because says here, the privilege relating to a trade secrets says a person cannot be compelled to testify about any trade secrets unless the non-disclosure would conceal fraud or otherwise work injustice. When disclosure is directed, the court shall take such protective measure as the interest of the owner of the trade secret and of the parties and the furtherance of justice may require. Okay? So, under the rules of procedure on corporate rehabilitation class, it's corporation law, the court may issue an order to protect trade secrets while under the 2020 revised rules of procedure for intellectual property rights cases. The parties may request for closed-door hearings in cases involving trade secrets. So, furthermore, the revised Penal Code and the National Internal Revenue Code endowed a cloak of protection to trade secrets by punishing the revelation thereof by certain persons. Okay? We have also this RA number 7394, the Consumers Act, says that prohibits the revelation of any method or process which a trade secret is entitled to protect except when relevant in any judicial proceeding under the said act. However, the privilege may not be invoked if the non-disclosure would conceal fraud or otherwise work injustice. So, of course, class, there are also other privileges that are not put into the rules of court but are widely spread in our jurisprudence, in our laws in the Philippines. Class, we have this, as I have also given this one, this Article 215, the Family Code of the Philippines, descendant when or not testify. Then we have also this in the jurisprudence also, the case of Air Philippines versus Pencil Incorporated, the editors, voters, info, mention in tax census, returns, and bank deposits, they are also prohibited. Then, Labor Code of the Philippines, information and statements at conciliation proceedings. They are prevalence are considered as prevalence also. Anti-money laundering cases, and of course, this new law, a Data Privacy Act of 2022. So that will be the end of our discussion this evening, class.